Welcome to Home, where faith and family meets. My name's Father Tim Donovan, parochial vicar here at St. Bonaventure Parish in Huntington Beach. And this is Pam Hurwitz, my co-host, and we're happy to be here with you this first Sunday of the month, like we do.
Yes. Awesome. Great to be here.
Believe it or not, Lent is around the corner. It's happening. I'm not ready for it, but it's happening, whether or not I'm ready or not. Ash Wednesday, we have in a couple days here. I think it's March 6th, I believe. So,
Yeah.
which is just, it's very soon. So we wanted to talk this podcast about Lent, about our experiences with Lent, maybe some things we can do with our families to help this Lent to be a time of renewal, so that when we get to Easter together, that could be like a real time of resurrection and new life.
Yeah.
I know that for me, in my own experiences with Lent, the years that I've really taken it seriously and like stuck to my prayer, fasting, almsgiving, that I decided to go with, that like those are the really beautiful Easters.
Yeah.
But the times that I kind of was like, whatever, I'll do it next year, those are kind of the inconsequential Easters as well, as kind of passed me by like it wasn't a special thing, So I really do think that those traditions that we have as church help us to like really engage
Definitely.
the experience more. And the same thing as we talked about with Advent as well, right? Let's not miss it. But for some reason, Lent is like a much more like held thing. I know even non-Catholics are like, they're giving up something for Lent, right?
True. Very true.
And so it's kind of a cool opportunity to even like engage the wider community in that too, and joining them in that sacrifice for some good, right? Some transformative good, which we're always in need of.
And I'm thinking for families too, even before, because sometimes starting Lent with actually Mardi Gras,
Mm-hmm.
which
Fat Tuesday.
Yeah, Fat Tuesday. Also, it can be kind of a fun kickoff to have some kind of event. I've been to some parishes on Mardi Gras where they've done family events where they serve like literally dinner that has like pancakes and a candy bar and pizza and just crazy, But just the idea then, I just think for kids sometimes, eating, experiencing, and then talking about what is in now this next day when we go into this fasting, what's the purpose of that? And sometimes maybe celebrating a little bit and having kind of a scrumptious meal the night before and talking about Mardi Gras and might lead us also into some preparation for Lent. So
Yeah, that seems to be like the logic of the Catholic experience, is like this feast and famine,
yeah,
or feast and fast, so that we can then feast again.
okay.
I think sometimes when we live in a world that's just constantly feasting, we never get the sense the feast doesn't make any sense anymore,
Yeah.
right? We just constantly indulging. Like, I know for me, one of the things that I recognized as a priest was that we don't really have a cook here that is regular. So I was noticing like every single time that I was hungry, I was like, what do I want today? And then I would like go get what I wanted. I was like, "What? This is not good. Like, it's not good just to like be always just kind of responding to my like want for like the best of that or the comfort food here or whatever." I'm like, I need some discipline, and maybe even the ways I eat and stuff. And so when I started to do that, it started to make me appreciate those feasting moments again.
Okay.
A nice dinner made, right? And so when I'm kind of maybe being a little more humble in my meal preps for the week, then I can really encounter that peace. And I think that's really what the dynamic of Lent is, right? And so maybe even having that Fat Tuesday is an opportunity not just to like gorge, but an opportunity to have like a foretaste of what we're preparing for, right?
True.
A reminder like, hey, the feast is coming, the big feast,
Uh-huh.
the Easter feast. But then there's going to be this 40 days or 46 days technically of really entering a time of self-denial, a time of penance to really hunger again and to
Yeah.
thirst again and to identify again our need for God in the midst of that season. What's your favorite part about Lent, Pam?
You know what? When you say the word Lent, the first thing I think about is my growing up, and I have three brothers, and we went to the Catholic school that was around the corner from us, but I mean it was probably about a half mile from our house, St. Norbert, and my parents were very they're very, very Catholic, and they really fully celebrated the different times of the church. And so Lent, we definitely were fasting and giving things up. And so my parents were always, and they continue to be daily mass people. And so when every Lent, I remember this so so concretely, but every Lent, we had this tradition that we needed to go to daily mass, but instead of, just going with them at 6:30 in the morning, they gave us the extra penance that we would ride our bikes to mass when they drove in the car.
So they would drive behind you as you rode your bikes to mass in
And
the
so
cold,
yes, yes,
uphill both ways.
yes,
Yes.
yes, and somehow they managed to get one other family, the Oldhams, okay, in on this, okay?
Do I know them? Donna?
Yes, Donna Oldham.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Hope you're listening, Donna.
Yeah, hope you're listening. So she and her brothers, there was a corner that we would meet at, and we had a chalk there. We'd keep this piece of chalk, and then we would write if one of us had already gone, because sometimes somebody oversleep a little bit or whatever. But I remember it just be so cold, so cold in the morning, and we'd all ride our bikes, all sit together at mass. My parents wouldn't even sit with us. I mean, it was just like this was this thing we were doing. They would drive home, we'd have breakfast, and then we'd have to ride our bikes back to school.
Oh man.
Yeah. And but just there was something really, really beautiful to that. Looking back now, there was something really, really beautiful to all as a family be doing something together. I mean,
Mm.
and it's something that, we and my brothers, we still, we've always continued to talk about. So I do think there is something very special about that opportunity, and that's why I'm saying even if you had the Fat Tuesday dinner, and to really take some time to intentionally talk about what do we want to do as a family, because if we don't do that, we know what happens. It's Easter, okay, and so
40 days goes by fast if you're not
yes,
fasting.
yes, yes. And so how do we and then also really, that opportunity to kind of teach our kids too, because a fast is so beautiful, just the idea of, that feeling, actually feeling, missing something or hungering for something, and
Hmm.
then being able to tie that to this hunger for Christ, and so how do we it's such an opportunity for us also as parents to kind of plant some of these things into our families and into our kids.
I think one of the beautiful parts about that too, sometimes we live in such an individualistic world, you know? Like I notice that most people, I don't think I very rarely heard like our whole family's doing this for Lent this year. Like it's
Right.
normally
Yeah.
I'm giving up
Yes.
chocolate
Yes.
and they like Coke, so they're gonna give up Coke, and this person likes whatever, so they're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And but I also hear about 3 weeks in, oh man, I ate that thing I wasn't supposed to, or I gave up on it or whatever. But I think part of it about being a community, being a family, is that we can help each other.
Yeah.
Like we can encourage each other. I know for me, like, um, anytime I'm doing something with someone else, like it's a more of an emphasis for me to show up and do it.
Yeah.
Because if not, I can be like, well, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, and then I'm pushing it off or whatever. But like someone else is there waiting for me, or someone else is there doing it with me. There's such an extra thing to that. I have a priest friend. He'll probably listen to this, but he only goes to the gym when his friend goes to the gym too, because he knows he won't do it without that friend, that
Okay.
accountability partner,
Yeah.
somebody who can really help and encourage him on the way, which I think is like so important, especially during Lent. Like
Yeah.
it's not easy to say no to ourselves
Yeah.
in a world that always says like happiness is about saying yes to every desire you have. But when we can remind each other of that, like remember Easter's coming. Yeah, remember this the feast is coming.
Yeah.
There's a certain strength that we can get from each other in that too. I'm sure like even with your brothers in the old M's when they were riding in the morning, you guys were like, this sucks. This is the worst thing ever. But then there was a sense of togetherness, like, and you kind of felt kind of obligated to get up and do it with them.
Ex So true.
You know, and that's a force that we can't underestimate. I don't think so. Deciding something as a family, we're having a family event here for a lot of our first communion families. In preparation with their families, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to encourage them to make a plan for the 40 days together, and so
And
they can kind of engage that with each other.
and it's, another thing I think about, with our Lent, when I grew up is that we always all gave up candy too. That was and I don't know, like, when I was a kid, candy was a really big thing,
Hmm.
okay? I mean, it was just live to try to find candy, okay? And so, I mean, I just remember that being a really big deal, and, And I also remember and another piece of that togetherness that you're talking about is there were some families that took Sunday off.
Yes. Did your family take Sunday off?
No.
Oh. I was just reading about that actually, because technically Sundays aren't supposed to be days of fasting, like from like food. You should be hungry on a Sunday. It's a day, little resurrection day we experience Easter, but like we probably shouldn't also, it says, in the context of Lent, like be taking off Sundays to indulge in what we gave up the rest of the
Okay.
week. Like we shouldn't be doing that. So I think you did the right thing with your
Yes.
family, but it does when the other people are doing it, you're kind of like, well, why me? What about me?
So I think that's another decision you have to make as a family
Hmm.
because, we always felt a little bit like, I think in a way, like you said, it's like a little like, "Oh, dang, that sucks that we do it that way," but almost like we take this even more seriously,
Oh, it's
you
a
know?
moment of pride for you guys, huh?
Yes. So I would encourage people it just makes it all the more sweeter to make it the full time, not I mean, that's just a suggestion, but, just yeah,
No,
be
it does make it more rich. Like,
yeah,
yeah, 40 days, I mean, I'm not going to say this, half heartedly, but like anybody can do something for 6 days.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
what about 40? What
yeah,
about 46
yeah,
days? And I think there's a certain sense there. Even in 40 days, I mean, even the psychologists say that it takes, that amount of time to make a new habit to stick and to break old ones.
yeah,
And so I think there's a genius in what the Lord has given us in these 40 days in the desert. Like the Lord didn't take Sundays off in the desert and go eat meat, like, or go eat something, right? He fasted for those 40 days. And like when we can enter that experience with him, it becomes way more rich. Because really that's the whole purpose of Easter, right? The whole purpose of Lent is to die with Christ so that we can rise to new life with him. But like if we don't enter the death part with him, then resurrection doesn't mean anything in our life. It's not going to happen. And that's the uncomfortable part about Lent, I think. The part that I resist in my humanity is like, I don't want to die with Christ. How about I just, hang out with Christ? And how about we just, show up at the wedding feast and we just hang out there?
yeah.
And he was like, no, it's like all of me needs to be,
The cross, the
all of you. Yeah.
sacrifice that yeah,
Don't underestimate the power of that,
yeah, oh, yeah,
to embrace it, to
yes.
enter this season in a serious way with your friends and or with your family especially, and to support each other in that.
And I think that's too sometimes for today's family, it's getting harder for us as parents to see our kids somehow sacrifice or,
Mm, suffer.
maybe even give up, and I just think, we were just talking for a moment about empathy and about understanding and just, anytime when we kind of hold back ourselves, there's so much fruit in that that comes from the sacrifice and in trying to sometimes understand someone else that especially like I remember my parents, we'd have huge conversations just about people that didn't, have food and, candy, geez, that's just really, I mean, we're giving up candy. Okay. But it was the opportunity for us also to kind of, some solidarity to kind of stand with and think about, um, you know, uh, different people's situations, which I think is another huge opportunity for us during Lent. So,
Yeah, I need to reclaim this. I think I shared this on a podcast at one point, but I used to fast from meat Wednesdays and Fridays. It's an
okay.
old church tradition. Still is there. But people, kind of can take other penitential opportunities during all the Fridays of the year, not, it doesn't have to be just not eating meat. But the secondary thing was to really go into solidarity with the rest of the world, the vast majority of the rest of the world who doesn't have the luxury of even eating meat,
Yeah.
of entering that place and not replacing it with lobster or as the seminarians did. I can't believe it. I felt so sick with this. The seminarians would, I hope I don't scandalize anybody by this, but they would go to the all you can eat seafood buffet on the Fridays of Lent.
Oh, no.
And I was like, you guys, I think we're missing what's happening
Yeah,
here. Like,
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
not to critique, I have a big enough beam in my own eye. We'll go there in a minute. But it was just kind of like to identify because I was partaking in that and I actually stopped because I was like, oh, wait, this is not it. Like, we're not called to just, indulge in the best of seafoods while we're not, having meat
yeah.
on Fridays. Yeah, I think that's a super important part. I mean, I think it may be good to transition into our gospel for this weekend. I think
Yes.
this gospel, we're not in Lent yet. This is the eighth Sunday ordinary time. But it's a perfect gospel, I think, to launch us into Lent. I think it sets us up perfectly, like what Lent's about. It's this challenging gospel about this reality of, us having this major beam in our eye, and then we're telling our brother that, hey, let me help you get the splinter out of your own. And can you imagine? I mean, the gospel's rich in imagery. Like, could you imagine this person with a beam trying to like look into someone else's eye, trying to get out the little splinter, and it's just like maybe putting 100 other splinters in his eye from his beam,
Yeah,
and I think Lent is that opportunity to ask ourselves, what is the beam in my life right now? How is my ability to see others as Christ sees them, to see myself as Christ
yeah,
sees me? Like, what are those things that need to be yeah, converted in me,
yeah,
taken out, removed, pruned? In the end of the gospel too, it talks about this fruit tree who's not bearing good fruit. And anytime a fruit tree is not bearing good fruit, it's probably because it's either producing too much fruit or it's not being nourished enough. And so pruning and then kind of going and giving it the right nutrients can help it to start bearing the right fruit. And these images aren't just nice images. These images are of us.
yeah,
Like, this is us.
right.
We are the trees, and we need to be pruned. And pruning sucks. Like, to be cut off all of our branches, the branches that maybe we value or think that are pretty or something
Uh,
like this. To be pruned, all of those things. It's hard to be cut off aspects of ourselves, but really for the life, so that we can bear good fruit for others. I was reminded too that a fruit tree doesn't bear fruit for itself. It bears way too much fruit to kind of add
Right, yeah,
additional, seeds to the ground to make other trees. I mean, it makes way too much seeds for
yeah,
that to be the case. It bears fruit for others
yeah.
to
That's good.
have, for the other animals, for us to eat, and that's kind of, I think, what God is inviting us in here to realize, like, the fruit is for others. It's not just for us. Like, Lent is not a time so that we can feel good about ourselves at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah,
We have to get away from this idea, or
yeah,
like, the Lent is so that I can be a good brother to them. Like, when the beam's out of my eye, then I can actually help get a splinter out of someone
yeah,
else's. Or when I'm bearing good fruit, just for others around me. And so I think this gospel is really challenging, but it like puts the finger right on it. Like, here we go. This is a setup for Lent. Like, it's an opportunity for us to stop and say, okay, before Ash Wednesday gets here, how can the prayer, fasting, almsgiving that I focus on this Lent help to remove those things, help to prune me, help to purify my heart and my intentionality to be who Christ wants me to be? Because our lives do get set up like this. We amass things and amass things and amass things that cover up the real kind of problem.
yeah.
And Lent can strip those away. The hungers, those kind of things can reinvigorate in us to identify us with the divine. Yeah.
Let's talk a tiny bit about those 3 things.
Yeah, sure.
Like, almsgiving, fasting, and prayer.
Right.
And, kinda starting with prayer too, I just encourage families to look at also like what your parish is doing. And I know many probably have, the Friday fish fry,
Mhm.
and, possibly Stations of the Cross.
Mm.
And I know the Sisters of St. Joseph in Orange have a Taizé prayer. And there's so many different beautiful expressions of prayer that are going on during Lent that I really encourage families to kind of look and see what's out there. Go on the diocesan website because there's some very beautiful, especially the stations, and even to go online and look for 'em. I mean, there's Stations of the Cross for families. They're beautiful, beautiful additions of the stations that can really allow you to walk through kind of this, the passion and the sacrifice that Christ has made for us, but make it very, very, understandable to your own age and what you can kind of understand. So I would really, and then I think I have mentioned to you before, but, we have also done a Lenten thing where, we just decided Fridays were gonna be, our night to just have our own, every Friday night that and I just found some kind of small resource or whatever, and we sat and did it together,
Little
and
mini retreat on Friday night.
yeah,
Yeah. Retreat, pull back, get away, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So even I think, that if you could even just I wanna start this movement called Just One Night, okay? Um, and just in families, and maybe for Lent, maybe that's it. Maybe you could just one night, and maybe it could be Friday night or just something to set some kind of a regular prayer some kind of regular prayer piece in, like we said, the stations or so many different ones, or just some type of coming together and sitting and talking about this time of Lent together as a family. Almsgiving. Any ideas on that, Tim?
Yeah, many of our parishes do like the Operation Rice Bowl,
Yes.
and to be able to, I think almsgiving only makes sense when it's out of some of our need. We can't just throw the additional thing that's in the car, change box into
Yeah.
it, but maybe make an intentional thing that maybe our fasting is associated with our almsgiving as well.
Okay.
Maybe we don't get Starbucks, but
Yeah.
yet we take the Starbucks money and we put it into, the box for somebody else
Okay.
who doesn't have that capacity, so kind of those all those things are together too in some way, and then maybe also we praying for that person,
Yeah.
and kind of bringing all those pieces together. So yeah, almsgiving, I think maybe even selecting a charity that is dear to the heart of your family. Maybe it's another family group, or it's the poor, or it's the disenfranchised, or maybe kids in another place suffering from a certain, disease or something where we can choose that as together. What is in the hearts of your family?
Yeah.
Like God places in the hearts of kids care for others. And when it's not there, there's something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so I think even like inviting our families to identify like a love, because if we're really like attuned to the Holy Spirit in our families and in our own hearts, like we'll identify that. That'll come to the surface. It'll kind of bubble up into this thing that's like, hey, there, here we are. This is the reality. Um, but yeah, I think that goes with the fasting as well, saying like I'm gonna forego, so like live simply so others can simply
Simply live.
live. And that's can be a really good place to ask ourselves, how can I live more simply this Lent? Maybe it is that we don't go out to dinner, maybe as much, or I
Yeah.
don't know. Where,
Yeah.
where in your life can
Yes.
you simplify
Yeah.
so that you can then not just bankroll that money for yourself, keep in the savings account, but putting it into a good for somebody else. Yeah.
And I think it's so important for us to try to teach our kids, like, when we're giving for God, for our faith, like, we wanna give our best,
Mm,
you know? And so sometimes we tend to just think like, oh, you're just like a canned food drive. You're like, "Oh, great. I can just get rid of all these expired canned foods that I have practically," you know what I mean? Or you're giving the stuff that you go through your pantry and almost look at, like, "What won't I
I
use?"
haven't used this in six
Yeah,
months, so I'll give it to them. Yeah.
yeah, and so, another practice I think that could be really rich for a family is to have your kids go through their closet and pick out some toys that they really like,
Mm, I don't know if I'm ready for that, Pam.
but that they think someone would, really like to play with.
Oof.
You know what I mean?
Or really like to wear.
Yes, yes. And just, I have 6 sweaters, I mean, that I like, but I'm gonna give one of these that I really, really like to someone else, and there is something, to giving, from our own hunger and not from our excess, and I think that next layer, kind of challenging ourselves to go to that next place and asking our kids to go there too, um, it it could be very valuable.
So it harkens back to last weekend's gospel about, those who give will be given back, packed down, overflowing, like things you can't even imagine. So it's like when we can be generous out of what we love,
Yeah,
then God, that our openness to receiving again something much beautiful is very open to,
yeah,
and it's only learned by doing.
yeah,
We only learn by doing that. Like
yeah.
when we cling to it, we'll never have that opportunity to be given anything different because we have enough.
And I think for kids especially that, this idea of Christ and, especially when they're younger, just to really put a face to him and, it can be really difficult to really kinda get that concept, but seeing him in others, especially I remember, once when I was taking some teens to the Catholic worker to do some service, and I remember one of them at the end of the experience said to me, like, "I just cannot believe people didn't tell me before where Jesus lived. I mean, how come it took me so long to find out where Jesus lived?" And
Oh,
so just I think that many, many times, service or serving someone else and that's such a great opportunity as a family. I we and it's hard because it means we have to stop our own life and we have to, schedule and plan, but, I think that, that experience and that setting some time aside and that disciplining ourselves to do something like that, it just the fruit of that in your own family will be tenfold.
And two, sometimes we look so outside of ourselves for these imprisoned and these lonely and all of these corporal works and spiritual works of mercy. They're in our home.
Yeah.
They're in our
Yeah.
families. What about grandma who we don't visit probably as much as we
Yes.
should, or
Yeah.
grandpa who we have not talked to in a while, or the aunt that everybody doesn't like, could we maybe extend something in this time of Lent, and maybe to the brother who we all struggle with,
Yeah.
to reach out that little olive branch and say, hey, like, we're making a sacrifice for you. That's true love.
Yeah.
When I'm willing to sacrifice something I love, right? And that's who Jesus is. The sacrifice of the Father's only love,
I
you know?
remember I was really touched by at one point there was when I was, doing, high school ministry and there were different service projects and kids, some kids would come to me and be like, I'm refereeing a a soccer game, and I'm like, "Are you getting paid?" "Yes." "Okay, this is not a service project."
Good, I'm glad you said that.
But I remember, this kid coming to me and just saying that something kinda had morphed into something, and it was that he had a job where he would mow this older woman's lawn, and he did that once a week, and, she had asked him to s he sometime one time he was finishing up, and he was kinda and Wheel of Fortune was on. And so he came in to say goodbye to her, and then she said, "Oh, will you sit down and watch this with me?" And then he was kinda like, like, "Gosh, I gotta kinda go, whatever," but then he ended up that this became this regular practice for him, that he would mow the lawn, and he would sit and watch Wheel of Fortune and talk to this woman every single week, and I was like, "Done,"
Like,
okay?
that's
Yeah,
that's a service
yeah,
project.
and I mean, and these people, like you said, they're next door, they're around the corner, they're yeah. We do
And
not
just
have to look
and
far.
I think as soon as that beam starts coming out of our eyes, our horizon opens to seeing the needs of others around us.
100%.
And to let that be kind of maybe the goal of Lent this year, to see others, to see maybe their need, and not just to be so kind of internally focused on what we want. So, well, we hope that you have a awesome Lent this year. We're going to
Yeah.
continue to talk through Lent, of course, about all
Yes.
these different aspects and these different maybe tools that we can offer you too as a family, to help you with that. And so
And
yeah,
definitely, I think there is, also this I don't know, this if we say that we have a little camaraderie, with our families, like me doing the bike ride, with my brothers, that was but then something about going on Ash Wednesday and getting ashes with all this huge family of
yeah,
Catholics that are all deciding to go on this little journey together so I would really encourage you, if you're able to, also to go together on Ash Wednesday and
absolutely.
get, go and get ashes all together as a family.
We have it 100 different times that day.
Yes.
Come, come one time, come all times. But yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because it's not a required day, but it is beautiful to enter it.
Yeah.
Not
To
because it's
enter to
required, but
yeah,
because I really want to enter this
yeah.
season. So, and that'll be our prayer for all of our families to really enter it. And please reach out and let us know if we can
And then
support you
keep
in
your
that.
smudges
And
on all day.
that's right.
Because then that
It's a
gives you all
witness,
kinds of opportunity to talk to people about what you're
and
doing.
everyone knows what it means.
Yeah,
And then they
yes.
can, even engage you on what your family's doing that Lent, an opportunity to evangelize too for going forward. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening in to Home Where Faith and Family Meets. God bless.
God bless.